Chapter 23. Bondage. A hare appeared at the hemlock. He popped up one morning and sat at attention and refused to explain himself to any but Lord Chanticleer. Pertelote greeted him and tried to set him at ease. Nope, said the hare, as though ease were not a virtue. His eyes were perpetually startled, looking left and right at once. His ears fairly shouted like exclamation points. Bang, bang, that he was nervous. Said I should go straight to the top, he said. Said I shouldn't fuss with other buggers. Said I should talk to him what's lord and general of all. Said Rooster. Ah, Pertelote smiled. You mean Chanticleer? Nope, yep. He's down the Liverbrook, said Pertelote. She paused. She liked the poor fellow precisely because he thought he had little to recommend himself, but he had dared the audience nevertheless. Therefore the coward was brave. I'll take you to him, she said. We'll wait, he said. Here. She nodded and went for Chanticleer. I think, she confided to the rooster as they returned, that he's been talking to John Wesley. Well, news, said Chanticleer. The weasel lives. No, I don't think this hare is much for news, said Pertelote, and then she stood back. I, said Chanticleer, and Pertelote heard the weariness in the word. Am Chanticleer. You? The hare's eyes gazed north and south, while one stood east of him. Me. Him what's lord and general of all? The same. Who told you that? Said's name was W. Said I should call him Bloody Warrior. Showed me scars. Courageous sort. I came. You came indeed, said the rooster, not smiling at the scene just painted before him. What do you want? Said you had enough. Said more than enough. Generous, John Wesley, the rooster sighed. Enough what? Well. Here on the point of the request, the hare grew stiffer than ever, flashing glances at the curious animal eyes surrounding him, and he muttered, Food. You're hungry? Nope. Yep. It's all right to be hungry, fellow, said Chanticleer, and he turned to the mice lined up behind him, watching. Tags? Roots and stalks, I think. Would you go get them? While the mice were gone, Pertelote noticed a moisture in the northern eye of the hare. Tears, and her heart was stirred. How famished were the creatures of other territories! She was glad that the hare had come. The mice laid the food before him, and still this fixture did not budge. Well, said Chanticleer. The hare gave a small cough, and all at once 7 others just like him came bounding from the wood, snuck to the food, and ate. The hare, still at attention, explained, Kin. A second load of food produced a second run of shock-eared hares, and another third, until the ground around the hemlock had exploded in fur and wall-eyed faces. They ate, and after they ate they nestled, for they were every one exhausted. And when they had nestled they began straightway to doze, all save the first hare, who continued erect. When finally he bent down to nibble, Pertelote took it as a sign that all the kin were accounted for, and the trick was done. What is your name? She said. String Jack. String Jack, sir. Why didn't you all come openly, together? He nibbled painfully as though stealing the food. So many, relatives. Unwelcome, he said. Pack and be gone tomorrow. Where? Said Pertelote. He nibbled. He didn't answer that. Nowhere. Sleep here tonight, String Jack, said Pertelote, and tomorrow this will be your home. The brothers mice gave a cheer. Huzzah! Chanticleer groaned. Goats appeared at the hemlock. Some were wire-haired and bony, some shaggy in the coat, all of them with black slots in their eyeballs, and bearded. Nobody had to invite them to talk. Pertelote didn't have to invite them to stay, and Chanticleer's frown grew darker. This breed bawled for food the instant they arrived, lifting their lips to reveal great yellow blocks for teeth. String Jack and his kin had eaten with fastidious manners, 1,000 chews to a mouthful. These ripped, chomped, smacked the food, dribbled and dropped the food, swallowed the food with gruntings, and afterward burped up all the food to chew it down again. Then the goats flopped down and slept. Snored, burped, muttered, and smelled like sour compost. Stringjack, it developed, had come from the wilderness, west of Chanticleer's land. The goats, who declared that they were of the tribes of Hophni and Phineas, had traveled from the mountains and the foothills east. John Wesley was busy. A hawk came whistling down from the sky, stooping at a dazzling 100 miles per hour and striking the fear of God into every little creature who loved his liver and wished to keep it for himself. Mice and the ground squirrels found holes with remarkable speed. Hares went up to attention. Moles thought the first part of a thought. Chickens dithered. Partridges circled on the ground, supposing that they went somewhere. Goats burped. But as it turns out, when his talons gripped nothing but the ground, the royal bird had merely been sent. There wasn't there, a rooster here who flew more skillfully than hawks and the swift, who fed marvelously anyone that asked for victuals? Chanticleer muttered, his frown coal-black. "I beg your pardon?" said the hawk. "I swore," said Chanticleer. "I said weasel." "To be sure," said the hawk. Chanticleer repeated what was fast becoming a litany. "What is your name? What do you want?" "Sharpshin," announced the hawk. "Victuals, if you please." Chanticleer, still jangled by Sharpshin's manner of arrival, snapped, "Tags!" A very busy weasel indeed. And sheep appeared at the hemlock, too shy to state their business, but hungry nonetheless. And Pronghorn appeared at the hemlock, disappeared when Chanticleer loosed a swear word, reappeared when Pertelote called to them. They leaped like springs. They ate nothing but the grasses, which they wound around their tongues with deep gratitude, and soon they were loving a rooster as if he were their father. Cats appeared at the hemlock, moons waning in their eyes, a high-born arrogance in their hearts, but a hunger in their guts so terrible it overcame their pride. Animals, humble and huffy, craven and crass, embarrassed, demanding or willing to work, and hungry, all of them hungry, appeared at the hemlock. Chanticleer turned none of them away, but he looked down from the cliff on 1,000 bodies and was vexed, because he said, "Who am I to care for so many?" Busy John Wesley Weasel was racing a long way around the lower apron of a barren moor, exulting in his energy, when one wild sound rang down the mountain and transfixed him. Lonely, long, and full of anguish was this cry, a bugling that thrilled the weasel to his loins. But this was a bitterly empty fastness. This was the haunt of the northern winds. Who? The bugling rose up again. Oh, voices in the wilderness! John Wesley peered to the top of the moor, and there saw a singular stag with his head thrust toward the sky, his antlers embracing his withers, bugling. Oh, look at that! One black stag on the mountainside, declaring himself against the universe. "Hoopla!" breathed John Wesley at the sight, and he cried out, "Hey!" Here was courage he couldn't help but respect. Who stands alone against the sky to challenge it? "Hey! Hey! Hey!" the weasel shouted, darting across the moor and climbing with happy speed. "Hello, you somebody!" John has to meet the one he honors, and saw that right now, a weasel of compulsions. But that is a stag of the aristocracy, one, maybe two in all the world. "Hey!" The stag saw him coming, dropped his head, and didn't move. "It's okay," cried the weasel. "Johnny's no troubles. He's a scrapper too, is John." 14 points, those antlers. Deep-chested the creature, and thick in the neck. Marvelous. But his eyes were low and suspicious, and he did not move. John Wesley was seldom in his life caught off guard, but he was taken by the great black stag and didn't see the lesser body leap from heath beside him. He was bumped and slithered forward. Up again in 2 twists, he tightened himself into a defensive posture and hissed, ready to rip a body apart. "De la cour!" shouted the stag. A fawn, a child wide-eyed and terrified, stamped pitiful hooves in front of the weasel and presented her forehead as though it had horns. This was the enemy? De la Cour! Now John was perplexed. He could drop the fawn with one cut at the fetlock, and he told her so. Lucky punch, he warned her, and he said, baby! But she ignored the warning. In spite of her terror, she charged him, and he had to scramble backward. Don't hurt Papa! She cried. De la Cour! Bellowed the stag. Baby! Squealed John Wesley, in the humiliating situation of running from a child. John just come to say hello! Don't hurt Papa! Papas can fend for them own selves! Leave us be! De la Cour! Lie down! This was the stag with final authority. Papa and parent, imperious. The fawn collapsed, so helpless after all. The stag said, he could kill you. Right, said John Wesley Weasel, is stupidness to chase John W. And he sat down as well to sort things out. Why come a baby? She's fighting for her. He looked up at the stag, who still had not moved. And he understood. Oh, Papa, he said. And then he said, oh, baby, what courageousness in you! This magnificent buck stood 4 hooves, frozen, in a low lake of ice, immobilized and faint from his imprisonment. He couldn't have defended himself. This dappled daughter of his had meant to protect him, with her life if she had to. Oh, baby! John Wesley's heart nearly burst to see such heroism in an infant. The gray moor, peopled with 2 souls only, was a stage for the drama of defiance, and the weasel was filled with awe. John, he said, John wouldn't hurt such fine somebodies, no. But then with the next thing he said, which he intended as nothing more than a homely and reassuring compliment, he hurt her anyway. He said, your mama brung you up wondersomely brave. The fawn drew a sudden breath, then turned her head aside and burst into tears. John Wesley himself was smitten. He could murder basilisks, but he couldn't bear to make a baby cry. Well, not brave? He stuttered. Not brung up? Not... So strong one minute, so weak the next. Can weasels ever think up soft words to dry tears? No. Her mother, whispered the stag, and his head was low to the ground. Died. She lost her teeth and couldn't eat, and died. Oh, said John Wesley, nobody's told me. And there matters stood for a long while, till the fawn's weeping subsided into quieter sadness. Well, John should have something for sad buggers. Sadness wants some action to perk it up. Well, said John, then here's the reason why John came, Yump, to set a fine somebody's free. He etched the ice around the stag's hoof, picked a groove there, gnawed the groove, cracked the ice, and released that hoof. See? Does John want to hurt somebody's papa? No. The fawn had raised her head to watch him. He did the same for the second hoof. The great stag sighed. Gladly the weasel attended to the third hoof too, but while he made his rapid scratches, he felt a warm sensation on his back. He looked up and was immediately discombobulated. The fawn had crept near and was licking him. He coughed. John Wesley Weasel, so skilled in warcraft and belligerence, had never learned how to handle affection. Therefore he made a savage face and snapped, "Bite your tongue, baby!" But he who couldn't convince her that he was good, now could not convince her that he was bad. She dribbled all over him in gratitude, her eyes both moist and close and huge. He swore, but it made no difference. Thundering, rough-cut oaths, but she kept licking him. He fairly attacked the third and fourth hooves, damming the ice, intimidating the ice to speedy water, and then the stag stood free. But then that great body could not support itself. The stag toppled and fell, and John Wesley was saved because de la Cour ran to the neck of her father and left him alone. "Babies!" he said with a whole new meaning. But the couple looked weak indeed, and he could not leave them merely to feed on one another. John Wesley took a deep breath and hazarded again the dangers. Warily he said, "Is dears might be hungry?" They gazed at him. They were starving. Now, he warned. No thanking John, mind you. No slobberings on a W, who's a bloody warrior, fighting's brawlings, and so forth. He couldn't stand another attack of sweetness out of the baby. Nevertheless, he described the Lord and General of all, praising that rooster extravagantly as foresighted and full of glory, and he directed both father and daughter south to the food bins and to health. And then he shut up. The great stag whispered, "Black pale on a silver field." "What?" said the weasel. "It is my name," said the stag. "I give it to you whole as a gift. We will go and find your rooster." "Well, bloody warrior?" asked the fawn de la Cour from her father's neck. John Wesley frowned like battle-axes. "What?" "Thank you." "Spit to thanks!" So he said, but she kissed him anyway, and the weasel was gone across the moor like a shot, running on 3 legs, trying mightily with the 4th to wipe the sweetness from his face. Chanticleer crowed the crows. Animals who had never known of vespers or compline before lay down in gratitude and wondered that they felt so comforted. Eating was one thing. It satisfied the yearnings of their bellies. But these regular signals of the times ordained in goodness, these cries in a kindred voice, were something else. They enclosed the animals against the void. They argued that here, at least, existence was not a chancy thing, but protected by a destiny, and the destiny loved them, for it came in the song of a rooster, one alive. They mercied them, and satisfied the longing of their souls. If winter hadn't silenced this priest, then what could winter do to them? Chanticleer crowed, and the animals slept. Deer appeared at the hemlock, aristocratic, both in their stride and in the cast of their heads, handsome, self-contained. They carried long ancestral names and a knowledge of their heritage. "Gold fess on a red field," one announced himself, and another, "4 red pallets," and another, "Blue Bend sinister." One stag came coated in midnight, with white markings at his muzzle and his breasts. His daughter wandered lop-legged behind him, and both were silent, because both were cruelly weakened. But this fawn, dappled like the autumn, was blameless altogether. Chalcedony, the crippled hen, noticed the fawn above all others, and felt in herself a motherhood so strong that it took her breath away. Yet she held back. She didn't say anything, though she gazed at the child through wintry trees, and the desire to love her cramped like pain in her abdomen. She limped, ever at a distance, because she thought, "What right have I to bother one so lovely?" The deer are noble creatures, and fawns grow up to be ladies. Thus the population multiplied all up and down the Liver Brook, back to the fields and through the deep woods. In 50s and 100s they camped, each tribe according to its lair and custom, and Chanticleer appointed leaders over families, sometimes with no more than a thrust of his jet beak, in order to administer the feeding of so many. An organization developed. Even the children and the aged sped well, and parents took confidence again, and the beasts looked with kindness on their neighbors. But the rooster said, "I can't do this any more." Wolves arrived at the hemlock. That was a complication. The wolves arrived in a secretive pack, rolling their shoulders, slinging low their heads, prowling balefully through the camp, sliding their eyes to the left and the right. They were a scornful breed, and they caused wherever they went a flurry of distress. Meek animals believe the scorn. Small animals notice fangs. One of the wolves was white, with eyes like ice chips, one black with a flaming glance. One was named, so the animals rumored it, Favonius, and another Eurus. These 4 gathered from 4 corners of the utter distances. A 5th was gray, but for deep blue eyes, Chinook, a wolf well collared in thick fur, great in her chest and thigh, slow pumping at the heart, possessed of an everlasting endurance, who could run from Chinook forever? In troubled whispers the animals spoke of the wolves, and when the pack slid by, even whispers ceased. They truly feared these creatures, who roamed the reaches of the earth, who could survive at extremes of the compass and of want. What law does the Radganger love? Any? None? Therefore shivers attended to the wolves, and small ripples of panic behind them. And therefore Chanticleer charged his crowing with sterner authority and a universal sting. It wasn't only comfort that he crowed, but the exaction of order as well, so that the maverick might be contained and the meek feel safe. But that kind of compline saps the spirit of the singer. It wants so much of him. Embrace 10,000? Prohibit their sins and praise their good works? Bulk greater than the bad, yet descend to the humiliated, and keep them generally all from harm? My God! My God! Chanticleer murmured at midnight, I can't do this any more. Perlote heard him. She said, You do it so well, my lord. I am tired, Perlote, I am tired, and in the end I'll prove unable after all. Why? Because once before you ended poorly? Yes! I know what I am! You say this even though the war was not lost, and we didn't die? You say this though we sit here alive? You say this, Chanticleer, about our victory? I say it! He shouted. He paused and softened his voice. I suffer the future, he said. I truly don't want one of these creatures to hurt Pertolote, not one. But I know the dry rot at the base of things. Chanticleer? What? Can I touch you now? No. They were nearly enclosed in the hemlock, since the boughs hung down like drapes, heavy under ice, and the night was dark. There was a privacy here. Pertolote said, Is it nothing that I love you? He sighed, and it was apparent that even such a question as this sharpened his guilt the more. Nay, it damned him now, right now, as neglectful, terse, and hurting the one he most would not have hurt. Not nothing, Pertolote. Please don't say that. How could I live at all if I thought you didn't love me? I would know whose fault that was, and I would die very soon because that knowledge would kill me. This is the truth. I'm not lying. Pertolote paused a long time after that confession. A great many thoughts passed her mind, and emotions sputtered in her like fireworks, but none of this showed in her face, nor in her aspect. Finally she chose a topic for him, not for herself. It would be nice if the dog were here, wouldn't it? She said. He said, Yes. She knew how to ease him. The war could be forgotten then for sure, she said. His old mournful woe would make us feel at home again, Mondokani. He could run like the wind, couldn't he, Chanticleer? And he loved the hens no less than you. And you? The dog loved you. The rooster's head bent. Pertolote said, And I would hold my husband again. He said, It would be nice. She whispered, Can't I touch you, Chanticleer? He said, No. When? She pleaded. Oh, Pertolote, wailed the rooster, when I am worthy. And she turned her head away and wept. It was in the following night that a coyote appeared at the hemlock.